Ethan Miller had dreamed for years of escaping the noise and rush of city life. The moment he saw the listing for a quiet lake cabin surrounded by tall pine trees and the still blue water of Clearwater Lake, he knew it was the one. After months of paperwork and saving, the keys were finally his. The drive to the property was calm and scenic, the kind of winding road that seemed to lead to peace itself. When he pulled into the gravel driveway, the cabin looked even better than the photos: rustic wood panels, a wraparound porch, and the faint shimmer of sunlight reflecting off the lake behind it. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt at home. As he began unloading boxes from his pickup truck, a few curious faces peeked from across the road. Most of the neighbors seemed polite enough, offering cautious smiles or quick waves. But one woman, standing stiffly by her SUV, didn't smile at all. She had short blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard clutched to her chest like a badge of authority. Even from a distance, Ethan could sense that she was the type of person used to being in charge. Within minutes, she was marching across the road toward him, heels crunching on gravel. "Excuse me," she said sharply, not even offering a hello. "Are you the new tenant here?" Ethan smiled politely. "Not a tenant. I bought the place last month." Her expression hardened. "You mean you bought within the Silver Ridge HOA? You'll need to fill out these forms and pay your association dues before you continue any renovations." She handed him a packet of papers. Ethan blinked in surprise. "I think there's a misunderstanding," he said. "This cabin isn't part of the HOA. It's private property outside your boundary." The woman's lips tightened. "That's impossible," she snapped. "All lake properties fall under our rules." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this one doesn't," Ethan replied, returning the papers to her. She huffed, clearly not used to being contradicted. "We'll see about that," she muttered, stalking back toward her SUV. Ethan shook his head and returned to unloading. He had no idea who that woman was, but something told him she wasn't done. What he didn't know was that he had just met Karen Simmons, president of the Silver Ridge HOA, and his new life by the lake was about to get a lot more complicated. Karen stood at the edge of Ethan's driveway, her arms crossed and her lips pressed so tight they nearly disappeared. Ethan tried to ignore her as he carried another box into the cabin, but her voice sliced through the calm lake air like a siren. "Excuse me. You can't just move in here without HOA approval," she barked, stepping forward with her ever-present clipboard. Ethan set down the box and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My property isn't part of your HOA. I bought this cabin directly from the county auction last month. It's private land." Karen's eyebrows shot up as if he had spoken a foreign language. "Impossible," she snapped. "Every home around Clearwater Lake is under the Silver Ridge HOA. We manage this area that includes the lake, the access road, and all the properties connected to it." Ethan tried to remain calm, even though her tone made it clear she was used to being obeyed. "You might manage the homes on your side of the lake," he said, pointing across the water, "but this cabin was never part of your development. You can check the public records." Karen glared at him, her eyes narrowing behind her sunglasses. "I know every property here," she hissed. "And we don't just let people move in without inspection. You're trespassing, and you'll need to stop unloading until we verify ownership." Ethan sighed and turned back toward his truck. "You can verify whatever you like. I've got paperwork inside if the sheriff needs to see it." That last line seemed to ignite her fury. Without another word, Karen spun around, phone already pressed to her ear. Minutes later, a county sheriff's cruiser pulled up the gravel drive, lights flashing softly. Ethan greeted the officer calmly and handed over his deed, complete with legal boundaries showing his property was, in fact, outside the HOA's reach. The sheriff took one look at the paperwork, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am," he said patiently, "this man owns the cabin fair and square. The HOA has no authority here. Karen's face turned bright red. She muttered something about errors in the records before storming off toward her SUV, tires kicking up dust. Ethan watched her drive away, shaking his head in disbelief. He had only been at the lake for a few hours, and already the peace he'd hoped for was being tested by a woman with a clipboard and a vendetta. The next few days were anything but peaceful for Ethan. What had started as one unpleasant encounter quickly turned into a full-blown campaign of harassment. Every morning, he'd find new violation notices taped to his door, demanding he pay HOA fees or remove unauthorized structures. One note even claimed his old wooden dock was in violation of lakefront appearance standards. Ethan couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. The dock had been there long before any of the new developments existed. But laughter soon gave way to frustration. The letters kept coming, and Karen's silver SUV seemed to appear every few hours, circling the lake road like a hawk. Sometimes she'd stop in front of his cabin, snapping photos on her phone. Other times, she'd shout across the driveway, warning him that non-compliance could lead to legal consequences. Ethan decided it was time to find out exactly what gave her the confidence to act like she ruled the lake. He spent an evening digging through online county records and old newspaper archives. What he discovered made everything clear and even more ridiculous. 5 years ago, the Silver Ridge HOA had been banned from managing or enforcing any rules regarding Clearwater Lake. They had lost a lawsuit after trying to restrict public access and fine fishermen who weren't HOA members. The court had ruled that the lake was public property and that the HOA had no authority over it or the cabins on its eastern shore, including Ethan's. Armed with that information, Ethan printed copies of the court order and the ruling documents. The next morning, he posted them right on the community board near the lake entrance where everyone could see. By afternoon, half the neighborhood had stopped by to read it. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others looked relieved. A few even laughed out loud. Karen, however, was furious. She marched down the road, ripping down the papers and shouting that Ethan was spreading lies. But it was too late. Word spread quickly through the lakeside community. Neighbors began questioning why they'd been paying lake maintenance fees for years when the HOA wasn't even allowed to manage the water. Karen's control was slipping, and she knew it. Ethan watched from his porch as she stormed back to her SUV, her phone glued to her ear. It was clear she wasn't done yet. The HOA queen was preparing for war. Karen's war didn't take long to begin. Within days, Ethan noticed new security cameras installed along the road, their lenses pointed straight at his property. One morning, he woke to find a bright orange final notice of violation nailed to his fence post, accusing him of unauthorized occupancy and illegal use of community resources. The letterhead bore the Silver Ridge HOA logo, signed of course by Karen Simmons. Ethan's patience finally wore thin. She had crossed from petty annoyance into full-blown harassment. He gathered everything: the fake fines, photos of the cameras, the previous police report, and the court ruling that stripped the HOA of authority over the lake. Then he drove straight to the sheriff's office. Deputy Cole, the same officer who'd handled their first encounter, listened carefully as Ethan laid out the evidence. "You've been more than patient," the deputy said, flipping through the documents. "But it looks like Ms. Simmons is in violation of a court order herself." That afternoon, a sheriff's truck rolled up to Karen's house. Ethan watched from across the lake as the deputy spoke with her for nearly 20 minutes. Karen's voice could be heard even from that distance, loud, defensive, and trembling with outrage. Finally, the deputy handed her a paper and pointed toward Ethan's property. Then he left. Later that evening, one of the few friendly neighbors, an older man named Tom, stopped by. "Heard the sheriff gave her a cease and desist," Tom said with a grin. "About time someone stood up to her. Folks around here been scared of her for years." He explained that the HOA board had scheduled an emergency vote for the following week. The members were furious about the truth coming out, not just about the lake rights, but about how Karen had been using HOA funds to pay for legal enforcement she had no authority to conduct.